What in the world did I just watch? Is what I, and probably all of you, were thinking from the beginning to the end of To Be Hero X Episode 5. This episode was insane, mainly because it just abruptly skips past the monumental cliffhanger from Episode 4, which I genuinely spent all week patiently waiting to find out whether Moon really was dead or if it was just her playing dead once again, which is insane if you really think about it, because Moon has supposedly died in 3 out of the 4 episodes she's appeared in. But that isn't the point of this video. Suddenly shifting to a practically new story, an entirely, or not so entirely, which I'll get to later on, cast is very disorienting, especially when it is done at the climax of our original story. And since To Be Hero X is actually an anthology series, which I'm sure a lot of you didn't know since I wasn't even aware until today, this sense of disorientation and feeling that the show is moving way too fast is only going to get more common. So today I wanted to break down why exactly Linling's story has been pushed to the back burner, what Yang Cheng's story means in accordance to that, and what we can expect from both Linling and Yang Cheng in the wildly chaotic future of To Be Hero X. Let's start off with why Linling's story has suddenly been put on hold for the current moment. In all honesty, when I first realized that we were moving on to a different story, I was quite upset, because over the past 4 episodes, I'd really begun to resonate with and appreciate the characters in the story, Linling and Moon especially. But after taking some time to really think about the situation from a storytelling perspective, I think I have a pretty good idea of why we've moved on from Linling's story, and that is because it's over. Now I know that sounds crazy, since it left off on such a climactic cliffhanger, and I'm sure we'll see more of Linling in the future. So what I really mean isn't necessarily that Linling's story is over, but his character arc is. If you think about it, Linling did everything he was supposed to do. He became a great hero, he saved countless people including Moon, and most importantly, he broke free of the character of nice that society wanted him to play. So even though there is a lot more left in the story, whether that's climbing up the hero rankings, or a relationship with Moon if she's even alive, none of it requires any kind of growth or breakthrough from him, because he's already done it. He's faced his demons, he's become a real and authentic hero. And so if we were to continue the story from his current perspective, it would be fun, sure, but it'd pretty quickly get boring and become predictable, which are 2 things that To Be Hero X certainly is not. Which is why I think the controversial decision of moving on from Linling's story to Yang Cheng's at such a pivotal moment was actually the best direction for the story to go in. But with that being said, we need to take a look at Yang Cheng and what his story means in relation to this series as a whole, because I think there's a lot of hidden symbolism here that can give us insight into what will happen in the near future. We can see from the first few seconds of episode 5 that Yang Cheng's story is dark. As a child, he watched both of his parents die right in front of him, and even though he does a good job of moving on and becoming a normal person, we can still see the lasting impact of such a tragic event. He's very self-loathing and constantly blames himself for everything. He tends to self-sabotage his own future, especially with the girl he loves, whose name I can't say. And he never believes that he's good enough. But as compelling as Yang Cheng's characterization is, I couldn't help but notice it is incredibly similar to Linling's. And it's not just because they're from the same world or have the same dreams. Everything about the two is nearly identical. Linling looks up to Moon, while Yang Cheng looks up to Isol. Linling is constantly told he's a nobody, while Yang Cheng constantly tells himself he's a nobody. Linling accidentally becomes a hero, while Yang Cheng just happens to become one as well. And at first, this may seem like lazy writing, but I really don't think it is. Instead, I think, and stay with me here, that Yang Cheng is the antithesis of Linling, and let me tell you why. The 2 characters, as we've already demonstrated, have near identical lead-ups to becoming a hero, but they have completely opposing perspectives on these circumstances, and on the way that they are affected by them. For example, Linling faces the cruelty and unfairness of the world through optimism, or at least through self-belief. This is proven in the first episode when he flicks off the world after being mistreated by his boss. That establishes Linling as the kind of person who is willing to stand up against the world and fight for what he believes in. Yang Cheng, on the other hand, blames himself for the unfairness or even just misfortune that comes with life. He beats himself up, aiming his animosity inward rather than outward like Linling. And another contrast between the two is Linling views Moon as someone that he looks up to, or wants to be alongside, while Yang Cheng views Yisol as the very thing he wishes he was, highlighting a much more dangerous and corrupted kind of reverence that Yang Cheng has towards his favorite hero. And the last and most important contrast between Linling and Yang Cheng is their childhoods. It is made incredibly clear to us that Linling's family is not in his life. They are never seen or mentioned before or after Linling becomes a hero. So, chances are they're either dead or have abandoned him. But we never get confirmation of this, because Linling never even mentions it. Isn't that a little bit strange? I mean, it's obviously important information, but the reason that Linling never reveals it is because it doesn't matter to him. Whatever happened in the past, Linling isn't shackled by it. He maintains a positive and confident perspective, taking on the world with all of his force, while Yang Cheng is the exact opposite. The very first scene of the story is him losing his parents, which symbolizes just how much their deaths have affected him and shaped who he is. All of this just goes to show the negative nature of Yang Cheng's character in comparison to that of Linling. And I'm not saying that Yang Cheng's perspective is wrong or bad. I think most people would feel similarly to him after facing such trauma. But still, it's the exact opposite of how Linling reacts. And I think what makes him being the antithesis of Linling even more likely is that Linling has already overcome the kind of problems and obstacles that Yang Cheng is going to face. So having another story around a character in the same position as Linling that triumphs over the corrupt world of heroes and truly becomes who they are is far too repetitive of a direction for To Be Hero X to go, which is why I think that it is very likely that Linling and Yang Cheng will act as opposites, with Linling symbolizing the courage and resolve to be who you really are, and Yang Cheng representing the tragedy of giving into the pressure and expectations that society imposes on you. Now that we've gone through the reasoning for the focus of the story being shifted to Yang Cheng, and what I think he symbolizes, I want to finally circle back to what I hinted at in the beginning, and that's that we might know Yang Cheng already. I'm sure most of you are aware that the hero who shot Moon was Yisol, the very hero that Yang Cheng looks up to and wants to become. But that doesn't necessarily mean it was Yang Cheng who killed Moon. It could be the original Yisol, who seems to be a very suspicious character already. Or it could be one of the numerous Yisol copycats who are trying to become his successor. But ultimately, I do think that it is very likely Yang Cheng was the Yisol that seemingly killed Moon. And the reason for this ties back in to what Yang Cheng might represent. If Linling and Yang Cheng really are antithesis of each other, then it makes sense for them to be mortal enemies, and for Yang Cheng to hurt the person closest to Linling. But even more than that, we need to recognize that so far in the story, Linling is the only real hero. He's the only one that we know of who is broken free and is no longer a slave to society or a hero agency. And because of this, he represents everything that other false heroes are unable to achieve, putting a massive target on his back. Because Linling can now be viewed not only as an enemy of the Spotlight organization, but as an enemy to all false heroes as well, and even as a danger to the success of all hero agencies. So Yang Cheng's reasoning for killing Moon and hurting Linling could be out of his own volition, or it could just be an assassination that another hero or even agency put him up to. And the very last thing that I want to hypothesize is that Moon being Yisol's target could simply be because she represents a type of freedom that Yang Cheng, or whoever else the E-Soul that killed Moon might be, could never attain. Because Moon, in a sense, is even more free than Linling. And we know already how badly heroes are tormented by a loss of their freedom. So, E-Soul's entire reasoning for killing Moon could just be to punish the person who got what he could never hope to have.